Hello everybody and welcome to Creativity in Progress. This is episode 5, which honestly seems so crazy to say because this little peanut of an idea has actually grown into something and it's actually a thing now. Like last Sunday when I recorded the last episode, I plucked up the courage and put the whole thing onto Spotify and Apple, which was a whole process in itself, and I honestly felt so overwhelmed that evening. I remember when I hosted it and then I tried to, because I didn't have a clue how to do it, and I kind of spoke a little bit in last week's episode about things being messy and kind of not having an idea about what you want to do, and not having an end goal in mind, but you just wanted to do something. Like I started these videocast things, episodes, as a way of sharing more of my story and hopefully helping other people with some aspects of being a creative. And so many of you asked for it to be an actual podcast, and I was like, oh, like this is quite scary, this is quite overwhelming, I don't even know where to start. Can I even put myself on Spotify? Like I had all these internal battles and it just felt a lot. But anyway, I sat down and worked out how to do it, and so you might be listening to this on Spotify or Apple and as an actual podcast, which blows my mind that I am in your headphones. But yeah, so I went and did that, and then the weather was atrocious here last Sunday. We had really, really bad storms, and I felt so in my head and so overwhelmed, and I didn't really know what to do because I had a banging headache after putting all of it on Spotify. I just felt incredibly overwhelmed to the point where I went and ran a bath, and I just sat in the bath and cried because it just felt like a lot. And I know that might sound a little bit dramatic, but I have no idea what I'm doing half the time, and I'm just going to be really honest, like I genuinely don't. I said to my therapist the other day, I was like, I just seem to just have almost like a tendency not to give up on anything and just to try different ideas until something fits and something works. And I kind of want to share more of that mindset with you today, and I hope that maybe kind of having an idea in mind but not having an actual path in mind will help maybe one or two of you like with whatever elements of life you're currently battling or facing or dealing with or wanting to pursue. So when I first started my business, I think a lot of us, especially with the realm of social media that we're in at the moment, I think a lot of us have this idea of what a business should be or what a business owner should look like. Whether you get up at 5, you do your meditation, you do your journaling, you go to the gym, you eat your 20 million vegetables a day and have your greens and have your anti-bloat and all your vitamins, and it's just a lot. It's a lot, and we're bombarded with all of this stuff on social media, and that is the way you should be earning 6 figures within the first year, and you should be doing this and you should be doing that, and it's really, really toxic. And I think a lot of us, when we start our business, we kind of have an idea of what we want due to things that we've seen online or seen things that we've seen other people do. But I think what I kind of want to talk to you about today is detaching from that a little bit. And don't get me wrong, it's important to have goals, and I kind of want to talk to you today about success and what that means to us as individuals rather than what we think it should be, if that makes sense. So I feel like when we start a business, as I said, we've got like this idea of how it should be run, what we should look like as business owners or creatives, or we've almost got like this idea of something in mind. But it's only through our own personal experiences and things that we go through, and circumstances and changes in circumstances, and by actually doing things, that we realize what we want from life and ourselves and businesses and from those around us. And there's no one shoe fits all approach to being a creative or having a creative business. And some of the things you see online, or last week obviously we talked a lot about comparison, but you might naturally find yourself comparing, but your life and your business doesn't have to look like anyone else's. And I think it's something that you need to figure out exactly what you want, but you can only do that through trial and error. So you're not always going to have all the answers. And I think, as I said, that kind of comes with time and experiencing different things. And over time, we figure out what is right and what works for us. And I think finding things that work for us as individuals is really, really key. I have tried so many aspects and elements of business over the years of being an artist, from doing miniature portraits to starting a secondary business to try and help creators with the business element of things. And some ideas stick, some ideas work, some ideas don't work, and there's no rhyme or reason for what works and what doesn't work. And arguably, if you stick to whatever you want to do, you can make a success of it, because, as I've said in the past, like, consistency is key with all elements of life. However, you need to work out what feels right to you. So when I started almost like a secondary business, which was called the Creative Business Guide, I had loads and loads of energy. I just moved into this house. I was going through heartbreak at the time, because I just found out my ex-partner had been cheating and had a whole nother relationship for like 4 or 5 months. And I moved into this house and I was completely broken, to the point where I felt so lost. I never lived on my own. I kind of had it in my head that he was going to be here with me. He wasn't. I was dealing with all of that. It was a lot. And the only way I could see a way out of it was by churning and channeling everything into work and the business. And I knew, because it was the middle of winter, I can't really work and draw in at night time, even though I've got all these softbox lights and all these different lighting. I find it really, really difficult to work if it's not daylight. So I was like, okay, I need to kind of create an idea or something that I can do in the evenings to keep my brain busy, because I'm rubbish. I'm awful at just sitting there and watching a film or watching TV. I just literally can't do it without having a distraction. So I would always receive messages saying, how do you market? How do you do this? How do you do that? How do you run the business side of being a creative? And it was something that I was like, okay, well, maybe I could teach different classes about this. And I started with so much energy. I set up a website. Like, I just needed a focus. I needed something to turn my head away from what was going on in my personal life and actually focusing on business, and not feeling scared of living alone for the first time, of trying to renovate a house and everything I was going through at the time. And so I set up the website, I set up the business, I created the domain, I set up social media for it. I was doing loads of social media posts. I was running, building and working all these masterclasses for marketing and how to not be a starving artist and all the rest of it. And I was still trying to draw, I was still trying to run this, my full-time business. And it became, I think I managed it for about 2 or 3 months before I completely burnt out, and then I couldn't work for about 2 months after that, because I had just chucked everything into all of this business and I was completely burnt out. I was so exhausted. I'd buried my head in the sand. I hadn't acknowledged actually what I was going through at the time, and I was I then kind of had to say, right, my life can't look like me working all these hours. It felt like I was working about 2 or 3 jobs. I was working a crazy amount of hours a day, and that's not sustainable. And in another episode, maybe next week, I want to talk to you about work-life balance, because it's something that I think as creators, a lot of us do really struggle with. But at the time, it made sense, but that wasn't my reality. However, I desperately kind of I tried to learn things along the way, and I learned a lot about myself during that period. And again, sometimes I think the point I'm trying to make is that sometimes we start an idea and we've got all good intentions, but it just doesn't work for us. I knew that teaching the business side of it, I'm not in anyone else's head. I can't help. I'm not a coach. I'm not a mentor in terms of business. I can only tell you from my own experience and through the way that my brain works, and trying to have a lot of other people come to me and say, well, what do you do in this situation? What do you do in this situation? It overwhelmed me to the point where I was like, I cannot physically do this. And I want to just focus on what's around me and my own work for a while. And that's why I gave that up. And well, I haven't given it up. There's obviously still classes that are all available. However, I haven't updated or I haven't created any new ones for the past year or so. But as I said, over time, you'll kind of figure out things that work for you and things that don't work for you. And you're entitled to change, and you're entitled to try things and for them not to work. And it shouldn't be seen as a failure. It's just something that at the time felt right. And maybe in 6 months' time, it doesn't feel right anymore. And that's okay. So I think when I had to take a step back from what I was going through at the time, and I burnt myself out, I couldn't work, and I really had to appreciate the journey that I'd been on over the past 6 months of buying a house, of being in a really fortunate position that I was able to try and do small renovation jobs, and I was still able to draw, and it was still my safe space, and I was still able to take Charlie out, and I really had to find self-regulating things that helped me process the emotion I was burying. I went back to therapy, I was speaking to people, I was actually trying to put myself out there a little bit more and trying to build up my confidence again. And I think over the time and over the years of being in business, from thinking back to 7-8 years ago when I was a uni dropout and I was going through quite a depressive point of my life, episodes of being on antidepressants and things like that, to the person that I am today, where I can sit here and confidently tell you that yes, okay, I still have these internal battles and I still have a lot of anxiety about going outside my comfort zone and doing things, but each day I am trying to push myself a little bit further and doing something a little bit more out there. This podcast recorder, as I said, it wasn't something that I really ever had an intention of becoming a podcast. I purposefully sat there and said, I don't want this to be a podcast at the start, because I didn't want to put that pressure on myself that it was going to become a thing. Because for me, as soon as I put pressure on myself, that's when I start to crumble. So I just have to almost practice the art of detachment with a lot. And that's something that I'm going to continue to talk about a little bit during this episode with you today. So one of the things that I know I have spoken about previously, and again, I want to just touch on now, is a lot of us find a lot of comparison online. We think we should be doing more, we should be achieving more, we should have done this, we should have done that. And that's not only from online, it's from maybe in our home surroundings, it's the people that we are with on a day-to-day basis. It's it's the people who try and make us feel as though, they project onto us, and we can often feel like we are getting left behind and we need to achieve more, we need to do more. And I think one of the things that life has definitely taught me over the past few years of being, broke, being heartbroken, being on antidepressants, having crazy bouts of anxiety, is that you have to be able to breathe in and to acknowledge all of the achievements, the big ones, but most importantly, the small ones and the moments of success along the way. So like sitting here last week on Sunday, where I had put this podcast on Apple and Spotify, I was like, holy shit, oh my God, this is actually a thing. And as I said, it might seem a little bit dramatic to some people, but I was like, this is crazy. And I had like a severe imposter syndrome, because I was like, who am I? Who am I to sit here and speak to you? Who am I to have these episodes? Who am I? Like, do I even know what I'm talking about a lot of the time? And again, I have to find ways to self-soothe myself and go, it's okay, I'm safe. Doesn't matter if it doesn't work out. It doesn't matter if I don't have all the answers, because I'm trying, and that's all we can do. We can try. That's all life is. It's just trying different things until something sticks, I think, a lot of the time within business. And I think the other thing, and coming back to the art of detachment, is I kind of have goals in mind, but I don't ever like to get too attached to them. So that's why I said that I didn't want this. I told myself I'm not going to label this a podcast. And I know for the first few episodes I was like, right, okay, I don't even know what this is, because in my head, if I'd said, right, this is going to be a podcast, that was a goal that I didn't want to commit to, because for me, I have a real fear of commitment with certain things. And I think the other thing is that goalposts are forever changing. The more you learn, the more you grow, the more that you adapt, your targets and the things that you want to achieve will forever be changing. So we kind of have to let go of having an end goal in mind, because by the time you get halfway there, you might want something completely different. So you kind of have to be quite a little bit fluid with your mindset and the way that you want to achieve things. You're not always going to have all the answers, and as I said, your goalposts are going to be forever changing as you grow. So you need to learn, and we need to work out ways to enjoy the actual process and acknowledge each step and be like, do you know what? I'm not going to have all the answers, but I know I'm doing the right thing. And it doesn't matter if next week I feel completely differently, because in the moment, this feels right for me at the moment, at this current point in my life. And another idea that I learned a while back is that by having the right mindset, it helps create our thoughts, which therefore create our feelings, which therefore creates our reality. So what I mean by this is your brain literally believes whatever you tell it. So if you start to tell yourself, but I'm going to talk about running as an example. You could go on a run and you'd be like, oh my God, I went on a run, but I'm not a runner. If you tell yourself, I'm not a runner, I'm not a runner, I'm not a runner, for like you keep imprinting that more negative thing, like I'm not this, then your brain will literally believe it, and you'll start to almost feel like crap about going out, because you're like, oh, I'm not a runner, I can only do run for 5 minutes, or but if you start saying, do you know what, I am a runner, and then all of a sudden you'll get up on a Sunday maybe, and you'll be like, right, okay, I'm going to go for a run. It doesn't matter if I do it really slow, it doesn't matter if I have to walk every 100 meters, but I'm trying and I am a runner. And all of a sudden it's that mindset shift. Just like with drawing, you could say, oh, I'm not an artist, I'm rubbish, like who's going to buy my work? But you have to literally believe that you're able to do things, because your brain is really, really smart. And as I said, there's so much neuroscience behind this, and it's something that I'm not in any position to give any sort of lessons on, but your brain literally believes anything you tell it, and it will hyper focus on things that you're aware of. So if you start saying, again, there is a science and a specific term behind it, which I probably should have found for you before I started this record. But say, for example, have you ever noticed that, I'm going to say, let's just come up with the idea of you want a new pair of trainers, and all of a sudden you start seeing a lot of people wearing those same trainers. It's not that all of a sudden loads of people have suddenly decided that they like the same trainers as you, but all of a sudden your brain has become more aware to that one thing. So it will literally hyper focus on things. Like if you start saying, oh, I want to get a new car, then you'll start seeing a lot more cars on the road. Like our brain's got a really funny way of making things are more of our reality. And I think that's why a lot of people talk about like manifesting. They start getting attached to the idea, and all subconsciously their brain starts to help them get there. So if you start telling your brain more positive things and saying like, I am an artist, I am a creative, I can draw and I can do this, then all of a sudden your brain's going to go, okay, let's give it a go then. So if you speak negatively, however, you'll forever be chasing and thinking you're not where you want to be, and kind of like chasing what's next. So you'll always be like, right, okay, I don't feel like I'm good enough for this. I've given it a go, but I want to chase what's next. Like I've just done a portrait, but I'm now in panic mode because I want to have X more portraits booked. So I'm not going to be appreciative of the work I'm actually doing, because I'm forever going to be chasing. And that's what I keep saying about not having an end goal in mind, because that goalpost will forever be changing. So say if you were a pet portrait artist and you got your first commission, you would be absolutely thrilled that you got that first commission. You'd be over the moon. Yet when that becomes your reality, you'll be like that you're regularly getting commission work. You'll be like, okay, well, why aren't I getting busier? Or I would like to get 5 commissions booked, or I'd like to get 10 commissions booked. But you need to realize and appreciate how you felt with that one portrait, and just remember and hold on to that thought. Be like, okay, I am still so grateful that people trust me enough to commission me. This is amazing. And okay, I'll figure it out. And it doesn't matter if I don't get a month's or 3 months worth of bookings, because I've got one that I'm really, really passionate about and I'm working on right now. And having those like big goals, it's it's great and it's really, really positive. Say you wanted to get, I keep talking about commission work, but if you wanted to get 6 months worth of commission, that would be your goal. That's amazing. But your feelings, when you get to having your diary full of 6 months, the feelings of how you feel now compared to how you feel then won't change. Your level of happiness surrounding that idea won't change. So it might feel in the moment when you hit 6 months worth of bookings, you'll be like, oh my God, I finally did it. This is amazing. But then you'll forever be going, oh, okay, well, I need to get 12 months now, or I need to get 2 years worth. It's exactly the same with like social media following. You know, you might hit 1,000 followers and be like, this is great. But then you'll be like, okay, well, now I want to get 2,000. And all of a sudden your goalposts are forever shifting. So we need to kind of learn to be grateful in the moment of hitting those miniature or those smaller success levels, because your life and goalposts will forever be changing, and having an idea that you can cling on to forever is almost like a misconception. And I think that's where like a lot of imposter syndrome comes from, because we can get attached to an idea. For example, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to just release a few of these episodes and see what happens. Then the idea of putting it on Spotify, I was like, oh my God, this is horrible. Like I've got a severe imposter syndrome now. Like, who am I to start talking about different episodes and talking about different deeper subjects and having like an episode where we talk about success? And I'm like, I'm not successful. Like, who am I to talk about these kind of things? But if you kind of detach from the idea of having an end goal in mind and appreciate the little things along the way, then all of a sudden life becomes a little bit more fun and a little bit more free. So it's about like stopping that chase and finding the happiness that's around you on a daily basis to kind of appreciate the journey and the everyday successes of life and business. And I talk a lot about having things that self-regulate my anxiety, whether that's going on a dog walk, whether that's doing some baking, or whatever grounds you, I think, or whatever creates those little daily pockets of happiness. That's what you need to cling on to, because life will always have extreme highs and extreme lows. And if you can kind of create those little moments where every day you do something that makes you feel good, or you acknowledge that something is making you feel good and that moment, then you don't notice those highs and lows so much. So I think it's important to kind of acknowledge what is genuinely and actually really, really important to you. That might not be being, having all these crazy goals about your art business. It might just be earning enough money through having a side hustle or from having a part-time job and doing a bit of artwork on the side to allow you a little bit more freedom and allow you to be creative. I think we live in a society, and we live in a culture now where, as I said, it's all about chasing. It's all about having extreme goals where you need to be a millionaire by the time you're 40, or whatever it may be. We're bombarded with all that stuff online, and that's not a lot of our realities. So it's about finding things in that moment where you're like, do you know what, I get to do something that I love every single day, and that's great, because that is what life is about. And another thing that I think I want to touch on here is a while back lost the idea that I wanted to grow as an artist, because to me that seemed so foreign. I was like, well, what does that even mean? What does growth look like? Am I talking about growth in business, or so the thing that I wanted to focus on, and I wanted to talk to you about, is focus more on the learning side of it, because the growth from learning will always be a byproduct. So if you focus on the things that you want to achieve, but be fluid with the things you want to achieve, and realize that there's never an end goal, and that the main thing is a step in front of you, and learning how to kind of create a real element of working out a way to do those things to the best of your ability, and master those daily habits, master the thing that the commission you're working on at the moment, or the piece of work, And naturally, that will in turn start to open doors for you. So, for example, say you were starting your coloured pencil journey, you really focus on learning the different techniques and different elements. You don't need to have a 5-stage business plan for you to start to become a coloured pencil artist. You really don't. You just need to almost focus on the thing that you're passionate about most, because naturally things will start to develop from that. So again, I talked back about my story, but when I first started, as you guys know, there was never an end goal. There was never an end goal. I didn't have a clue what I was doing when I first started. I was suffering severely from anxiety and all of these different, like, really quite negative mindset beliefs. So I just really wanted to get good at one thing, and the thing that calmed me the most, which was coloured pencil. And I started posting online, and then I started doing, like, trying different things, and not everything's going to work out. And then 8 years down the line, I sit here talking to you on a podcast, which is the last thing I expected 8 years ago, I'll be honest, or even, to be honest, 8 months ago. But when you master something and you're working towards getting to the best of your ability at that one thing, I promise you more doors will open. So you kind of want to be fluid with the things you want to achieve. You can have a loose goal in mind. So say, like, for example, you want to, as I said, get to a position where you can go full time with your business, but you don't need to have all the answers, and you don't need to focus on each, like, the end goal. Just take the first step that's in front of you, because the rest of the path will present itself in time. So you can have goals, and you can view these goals as like a direction of the way to go. So for example, another example that I've got would be, say you wanted to pay off your debt, or you wanted to get in a position to buy a house, or buy, I don't know, something, a new car. I'm talking about materialistic things, but it's just because they are something that you can work towards. A lot of us will want to sort of purchase a house at some point, maybe, I don't know. But that was a goal for me for years, and I think that's why I'm talking about it. I didn't know what my house was going to look like. I didn't know how much budget I was going to have. I didn't know how I was going to do it. But I just had to trust my journey and trust the process in order to one day, hopefully, be in the position that I could afford it and do those things. But you don't need to have all the answers, because if you're like me and you get attached to an idea and it doesn't work out, that's when you start to go, oh my God, this is awful. I can't do this. This is shit, basically. And I'm just going to give up at this point. Whereas if you go, okay, well, I'm going to give myself X amount of time. In fact, you don't even need to give yourself X amount of time. If you can just go, I've got a goal in mind. This is what I want to do. It doesn't matter how long it's going to take me, but I know one day I'm going to get there. Then all of a sudden you start almost like seeing more opportunities, and you go, okay, well, it doesn't matter if all of it doesn't work out at the same time, and I change and I learn and I adapt. But it's learning is the biggest thing. You don't need to have, as I always say, you don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to have everything figured out. You've just got to take the first step. And I think sometimes we really do need to just acknowledge that you can let go of the end goal and just focus on the path that's in front of you, because it will in time present itself. So the last kind of thing that I wanted to touch on in this episode was, I know I spoke about it a little bit earlier, was about keeping yourself regulated during the process of growing and building and learning, because life has a funny way of throwing extreme highs and extreme lows on you. And if you can kind of create a baseline level of happiness that you can do have things that you do on a day-to-day basis. So as I said, whether that's to do with walking your dog, or riding a horse, or doing a bit of drawing for you, or painting, or whatever you do, then just try to incorporate one or two of those things on a day-to-day basis, the things that you know ground you and make you really happy. Because if you can focus and you know that you've got those things that you look forward to doing on a day-to-day basis, that will become your baseline of happiness. And so things won't end up being a huge roller coaster if they do and they don't work out. So before I learned about this, and I had a failure, or I had something, or I was rejected from a publisher, or something happened, it would set me off into a manic spiral of, I can't do this, this is awful. And don't get me wrong, life has a really, really funny way of testing you. And when I first moved into this house, as I said at the start of this episode, and I found out that my ex-boyfriend had been with another girl for like the past 4 or 5 months of our relationship, I was beating myself up so much because I was like, I'm stupid, how did I not see this, how is he so clever? I didn't think I was a fool back then, like, but I started having all these like horrible beliefs about myself, like, this is awful, and it really, really sent me into these another manic spiral where I focused so much on work, and the thing that made sense to me was to start a second business, because that's the thing that you do when you're heartbroken and you have got loads of time in your hand. But the reality was that was just a short-term knee-jerk reaction. So when we create and we sort of learn to let go of outcomes, and we focus on what's around us and what actually makes us happy, which does take time, because it's taken me 2 years of living in this house on my own to kind of figure out, okay, I really like baking, and I really like the gym, and I really like taking Charlie for a walk, and I really like doing certain things. Those become your non-negotiables. And when life does have a curveball and a way of throwing things at you, then all of a sudden, when something bad does happen, you're like, okay, I've got through this before, and I've been okay, and I've made it through, and I can do it again. And all of a sudden those things don't have as much of an impact, and you can kind of keep yourself a little bit more grounded and a little bit more regulated. So I think I want to just finish this episode off by asking you the question of, what does a happy life look like to you? And what does your day-to-day life, if you could have anything you like and you could live your perfect creative life, what would that look like to you, and how would that manifest itself? And how can you take those little steps to incorporate those things on a day-to-day basis? Because that will become your baseline level of happiness. And when you create those baseline levels of happiness, you can kind of detach a little bit from goals, because you're not striving for extreme things to try and get you to that level of happiness. I hope that makes sense, because I know that when I first had, quote unquote, a little bit of success within this business, I was adamant that I wanted to really treat myself, because I was like, I've worked so hard, I've managed to do this, I've managed to do that. And growth feels uncomfortable, and being in different positions within life and business often feel uncomfortable. And I had a really good one month, and for years now, I'm a bit of a petrol head. I love cars, and I used to be in the motor trade, and I had it in my head that at some point I was going to buy myself my dream car, and that was a goal that I was desperate to achieve. And last year I managed to achieve that goal, and I didn't get a new one. It's about 9 years old, and it's one of the cheapest ones that you can get. But I was so happy and so proud that I'd hit that goal. And the moment I drove off the forecourt, or I drove out the garage with that car, I was elated. I was absolutely elated. The next day, however, I sat there and I cried, because I was like, what the hell have I done? I've been so stupid. I feel fake. I feel false. Like I don't want to share. Like I can't acknowledge that I've done this. I felt horrendous. And I had a business coach at the time, or someone that I was speaking to give me a little bit of a pick me up around the business anyway. And she said to me, can you afford this car? I said, yeah. And she went, so what you've done is you've just almost like, you're allowing yourself to step into that next realm of your journey as a creative, of your next stage of business. She said, you don't grow from being comfortable. You have to push yourself out your comfort zone. You have to put yourself out there. And I was like, looking back on that, I do completely agree with her. But when I drove away with that car, I was so happy for about a day. The next day I cried a lot because I felt like, what the hell have I done? This is crazy. And don't get me wrong, I still get so much enjoyment because I absolutely, as I said, I'm a real petrol head and I love my cars, but I still love the car. I still get in it. I'm like, oh my God, this is so cool. I love this and all the rest of it. But as soon as I bought that car, I was like, okay, after a week or so, I was like, I wonder what my next one's going to be. I wonder what I'm going to do next. I wonder how this is going to all work itself out next. I wonder what's going to happen next. I wonder what my next goal will be. And I really needed to learn, and I have learned through finding my baseline of happiness over the past year of really working on myself and being in therapy, that those big goals are great. They really are great. However, what is more important is focusing on the day-to-day habits that make us who we are and make us the people that we like and make us people that we like about ourselves. Me having a flashy car is great, but it means absolutely nothing. And that is the reality of it. And I learned that the hard way, not the hard way, but I learned that through experience. And it's when you experience life and things and doing things and achieving things and failing at things, then you work out the person you want to be and you work out what's right for you and what's not right for you. And doing things like that really humbled me and really allowed me to go, do you know what? I don't need all these things. I need my dog. I need my pencils. I need things, but I don't need having these extreme goals because the goalpost will forever be moving. So focus on your happiness, your baseline happiness. What does that happy life look like to you? How can you incorporate those day-to-day things, even if it is your morning coffee, even if it is just going out for a walk on your lunch break and having a moment to yourself and just taking a deep breath and acknowledging like the weather, for example. It's creating those daily micro habits which will, I promise you, amount to a huge amount of change within your life and within your creative business. That is kind of all I wanted to talk to you today about the subject of success, happiness and goals. As I said, I am trying to kind of come away from my story a little bit, but it's hard because there is still so much I want to talk about and there's still so much I want to say. And each episode I seem to be getting a little bit more anxious again and a little bit more overwhelmed just because I'm like, these are subjects that are still quite scary. I think being an artist and then having the correlation between being a creative and having the mindset that the belief that a lot of artists really struggle with certain things, and then me saying in the same episode like, oh well, last year I did okay and I went and bought my dream car. That seems like so foreign, but I want to be able to share the things that I've achieved and the things that I've failed with, both the failures and the successes of being an artist, in order to, as I said, I share my story in the hope that it will help other people. So as always, thank you so much for being here. It seems so crazy. This is now episode 5. I want to really talk to you guys next week about work-life balance because it's so important, and that's where I'm going to leave it for today. So thank you so much for being here. I really hope you've enjoyed this episode and it's helped somewhat with some things that you might be going through. As always, sending you so much love, and I will speak to you next week.